All right, everybody, welcome back to the User Adoption Real Talk from the Expert series. If you are new to this series, we are doing this video series to talk about the report that we released earlier this year, which is the 2018 User Adoption and Onboarding Benchmarking Survey. With this survey, we surveyed over 450 SaaS leaders, and we really wanted to dig into user adoption challenges and how companies are taking on those challenges today. So how are they measuring success? How are they executing initiatives? How are they maintaining momentum? And so, we thought what a better way to kind of have everybody, describe the findings that we got from this by getting on the experts themselves. So today, we have a familiar face with us, who is Bill Cushard. He's the Director of Marketing at ServiceRocket. So he's going to help us kind of answer a few questions we had from the report about onboarding. So before we go into the questions, Bill, if you just kind of want to introduce yourself, maybe talk a little bit about ServiceRocket and your background and everything like that.
Sure. Hi, I'm Kelsey. It's a pleasure to be here too. Thank you I'm honored to be part of this. As Kelsey said, I'm Bill Cushard from ServiceRocket, and ServiceRocket is in the business of helping software companies get their software deployed and adopted. Right. So we're all about software adoption, and we do that with training, customer education, implementations, support, and we develop software applications that connect different software tools together, like Jira and Salesforce and Workplace and ServiceNow and things like that. So a lot of integration work between software so that people have other reasons to use it. So that's what ServiceRocket's all about.
Awesome, perfect. So yeah, one of the big findings that we had found from the survey was that only 33% of our respondents had visibility into the onboarding process, which we just thought was very interesting considering we put so much emphasis on creating a good onboarding strategy. So that being said, our kind of first question we have based off that is, what are the top maybe 3 to 5 metrics that companies should be measuring during the onboarding phase?
Yeah, this is a really fun question, and the problem is obviously this is it would be different metrics for different companies. But one thing I will say is, and I'll talk about some examples, but to simplify this, it's almost like the metric matters when you measure it. So the way we look at it is in an onboarding process, and the goal of onboarding is get customers up and running, right, basically, right? And so what does up and running mean? So if you focus on metrics in the first 30 days, for example, like one metric at a time. So in the first 30 days, or whatever your time frame is of onboarding, the metric might be one metric, and you focus on one metric. Then in the next 30 days, or whatever time period, there's the next metric, and so on. So maybe your onboarding takes 2 weeks or 3 months. So you want to break it up and focus on one metric at a time. And so I'll share 2 quick examples. One is Workplace by Facebook. So that's collaboration software, kind of like Slack, right? So, a metric that Workplace by Facebook would measure is account activation in the first 30 days. So that whoever's rolling out and doing the onboarding, the customer success team, the one metric they follow in the first phase of an onboarding program is account activation. How many employees, and that's the percentage of total users that activate their account. So how far can we get? And they set a goal, and let's say it's 80% of all employees that activate it. Okay, so now everything we do in onboarding is to get people to activate the account. Now at phase 2, once you get to that goal, now you have some kind of a phase 2, and now you have a different metric. And that might be, in the case of Workplace, is mobile chat app downloads, right? So how, of the people who activated, what's the percentage of people who downloaded the mobile app? So there's a metric. And so everything we do in a phase 2 of an onboarding might be get people to download the mobile app. And we do signs in the office, and we send out emails, and all the things that we can do to help champions do that. Now a phase 3 might be activity or use of the product. So what's what's the average weekly number of posts per person, right? So in other words, the metrics are a little bit different. Now for a product like Jira, which is like project management and bug tracking software, the first metric might be how many customized workflows were created for a customer, right? Because if you create workflows, you're probably going to start using the product because you're customizing it for you. That might be the first metric. And it might be you have to get to 10, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10. The second one metric might be in phase 2. Okay, or is the customer creating projects for their work in Jira? So maybe if customers don't do projects, that's a bad sign. So we want to get customers to X number of projects. So you really have to get specific in what you're measuring, these KPIs. So whatever the software you sell, you want to find out what these actions are that people do in your software. Download the software, share software, create the assets, make projects, activate users. And then the second part of that is now you want to phase it in, because you can't measure all the metrics. And some metrics matter more today than they do 6 months from now.
Right, definitely makes sense. I think you make a really great point too, in that you got to take kind of baby steps sometimes, or just split it up into phases. I think people just hit the gas pedal, want to hit the ground running real quick, and I think you kind of get too all in at once, and it's good to kind of have that perspective and take a step back. So love that.
Totally.
What are some of the key metrics that people should consider if they want visibility into user adoption, since we're talking about kind of visibility and onboarding?
Again, the way I look at it is there is no metric, because it's different for all of us. But I will say this: you have to find out what your Moneyball metric is. I know that's kind of a cliche, but there is a metric, or there might be 3 things that your customers do in your software that makes them sticky. Whatever that is, that core action that they take. And I'll give you an example without revealing the name of the company, is that one company that we worked with has software where you create content assets. I'm using that term kind of broadly, right? And so the more of those you create, you're probably a better customer. But they actually found out that if a customer creates 33 of those content assets, that those customers renew at 3 times the rate as customers that don't create 33 of them. So I was working with this software company in the context of how do we create education programs for your customers. And so once they said that to me, I said back to them, now, okay, let's double click on that. From now on, the only education strategy we do together is going to be to help customers get to make 34 of those content assets and nothing else. If something else doesn't contribute to helping a customer make 33 of those, we're not going to do it. That's how we're going to prioritize. So whatever that number is for you. Now, in the case of Jira, that might be getting people to create 10 projects. It could be something like that. So in Salesforce, in the CRM, it might be getting a customer to create at least 35 opportunities. It could be that. So you have to find that number or that metric and go after that thing. That's hard to do because you have to sort of get some data people involved and figure out how that correlates to a renewal rate or an expansion rate or a revenue target, because that's a thing that matters. But once you find that number, that focuses you on what you have to do to help customers get up to speed or onboarded or whatever.
Right, exactly. And I think this is actually a pretty good transition into the third question we have of this, which is, what is the first step to understanding where gaps might be in your measurement process?
The gaps. Well, going back to my previous answer, the gap is we don't know what that metric is. And we're sort of guessing. And actually, I think it's okay to guess. But I think when people look at onboarding success, what software companies do is that we're not precise enough. In other words, we say we want to get adoption of our software, and then let's say you double click on that and you say, okay, what does that mean? And they go, well, they're using it. Well, they're using what? Well, they're using the software. Well, what part of the software? And then that gets into, we're coming up with things to measure. And then you have to ask, okay, do we track that data today? Or can we run a report on that today? And everyone says, well, no. And so I respond by saying, okay, then that's not the metric we have to find. There's a gap there. So even if you have to guess, so let's say you don't have your analytics team figure out what your 34 is in my previous example. Maybe you have to say that product adoption means the number of times a customer logs in. Well, everyone can track that. every SaaS company can run a report on number of logins by customer probably. And you might argue that, well, that doesn't mean adoption. Okay, well, that's fine, but at least you can measure it. And if you can make the number of logins go up from 2 to 4 a day, maybe that's good. But the gap is if you don't have the ability to know that number, to know it's an objective number, and to be able to run the report, then it's sort of meaningless to say the goal of our onboarding is to get more adoption. You sort of have to pick that thing. Do they click on the opportunity object in Salesforce? Do they log in more often? Do they share? We have a customer that creates visual charts. And so they know that if the more people share a chart with someone else in their company, the more they renew. So it's like the metric is how many average number of shares per week is the metric. So the gap is not knowing that for you. That's the gap, and you have to be precise like that.
It's definitely a learning curve for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think a lot of it also comes with team alignment and things like that, and kind of bridging those gaps. And but yeah, definitely agree. I think this was incredibly insightful. I think there was a lot of great takeaways that people that are watching this can take away today to put towards their own onboarding user adoption strategy. So I thank you very much for being here. This was awesome. I'm going to put links in the description box to everywhere where you can find Bill online. I'll also put a link to where you can download the full report. So thank you so much, Bill. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.